Welcome to Subaru Ecu Flash Training Part 25. In this training tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at working with our Flex Fuel Tuning feature in our Carberry ROMs. Our Flex Fuel Tuning is going to allow us to integrate a flex fuel sensor to measure the ethanol content in our fuel system. We can vary the fuel, the spark, and the boost amounts based on that ethanol concentration. We have a lot of things to talk about in terms of configuration within the software and how to go about actually calibrating flex fuel properly. Let's jump into our training tutorial so we can check this out.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with our Flex Fuel Tuning feature within our Carberry Speed Density ROMs. Our Flex Fuel Tuning is going to give us the ability to run a flex fuel sensor that allows us to measure the ethanol content in our fuel system. We're able to vary the fuel, spark timing, and boost targets according to whatever the ethanol blend is going to be at. Ethanol fuels give us a huge advantage for making additional horsepower and torque safely out of our engine, and Subaru engines respond really well to ethanol fuels, so this is something you most likely want to take advantage of if you're going in and tuning with a Carberry speed density based ROM. Let's go and talk about the benefits and the effects of working with ethanol fuels in general and tuning, and then we'll talk about how we can integrate flex fuel control into our ECU here, working with the actual programming features in the Carberry ROM. And then we'll talk about the order of operations that we actually have to go in and calibrate and tune using the flex fuel feature. It's actually relatively simple, but again, we need to do things in specific order so that we don't go in and potentially damage the engine, either run it too lean or run too much spark timing or too much boost, or the combination of any of those. So the first thing I want to talk about is tuning on ethanol-based fuels. Why is ethanol fuel so much better than a petrol-based fuel, specifically 91 or 93 octane? So ethanol has cooling properties that are going to be far superior to a petrol-based fuel. We'll find our combustion temperature will get pretty high when we're starting to run a lot of boost pressure. Because the combustion temperature gets high, we have a higher likelihood for knock or preignition to occur. When we're dealing with an ethanol fuel, it burns much cooler. As a result, we have lower combustion temperatures. Because our combustion temperature can be controlled and is lower, we're able to run more cylinder pressure, so we can run a bit more spark timing and or run a bit more boost pressure. Because of that, and increasing in our cylinder pressure, it'll give us an increase in horsepower and torque. So we have this cooling effect that'll allow an increase in horsepower and torque as a byproduct of being able to increase the cylinder pressure from the cooling effect. The ethanol fuel also has higher octane compared to a normal 91 or 93 octane fuel that you'd go and get at the gas station. So we have the octane effect as we would on a race gas, so a race petrol-based fuel that we would go in 110, 115 octane. So we have kind of a two-part effect with ethanol fuel. On a turbo engine, the cooling effect is pretty substantial, so that's where we get a majority of the gains, although the octane, which is about 105 on E85, still is going to give us a pretty large margin in terms of an increase in effective octane. So what we'll find is, again, we have the ability to control the combustion temperature. Because we can keep the combustion temperature in check, knock and preignition are less likely to occur, although they still can occur, but much less likely. And therefore, because we keep the temperature in check, we can increase the pressure, and because we can increase the pressure, we increase the horsepower and torque production. So when we're calibrating and tuning with our ethanol-based fuel, our goal is to optimize fuel and spark timing and boost control proportional to whatever the ethanol content blend is going to be at. Now this is going to be where it gets a little bit tricky because it has to be very specific when we're delivering the fuel, spark timing, and boost targets. If we don't have a way to measure what the ethanol content or the ethanol blend percent is going to be in our fuel system, we have no way to implement a flex fuel style control. That's the beauty of flex fuel control. We can actually go in and compensate and account for everything. We can account for this based on a flex fuel sensor. The flex fuel sensor would be mounted on either the feed line or the return line within the fuel system. As the fuel goes and passes through and flows through the actual sensor, it'll report back to the ECU or the device that you're using for monitoring for a flex fuel sensor. It'll report back whatever the ethanol content's going to be. Anywhere between 0 and approximately 98%, which is pure ethanol. We can't get up to 100. 100 is going to be something that you can't purchase. You'd have to actually distill it on your own because of federal regulations here in the United States. 98% is the highest that we can get. So they always put 2% of some kind of other mixture in there so they avoid any kind of alcohol tax on the actual fuel when they're producing it. So 0 to 98 is the range that we would find that we can actually purchase and work with ethanol-based fuels. And with a flex fuel sensor, we can determine that range of wherever the blend percent is going to be at, anywhere between 0 and 98%. Now, because we can measure this and we know exactly what's going on with it, we can scale our fuel delivery, our spark timing, and our boost control proportional to that ethanol blend percentage. Now, the one thing that we have to make sure is right or the engine won't run properly is the fuel delivery. And we'll find that we actually can mathematically figure out what that percentage of increase is going to be across idle, part throttle, and wide open throttle. It's a global offset to the injector pulse width. So on petrol fuel, if we figure out the pulse width being, let's just say, at idle something like 1.0 millisecond, when we're on an ethanol fuel, it'll be scaled up approximately, now if we're on E85, it'll be scaled up approximately 34 to 35%. And we'll find as a result, what we deliver in the pulse width would be something like 1.35 milliseconds. If we're scaling everything up 30 or 35% to be able to compensate for that blend percentage.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.